Hello and welcome everyone to today's expert session. We're about today's expert session inside modern data teams. First, a warm welcome, and before we start, I want to talk a little bit about the session. So, what is this expert session about? You know, we at Scalefree we have some different expert sessions, like the DBT one. We have one about Warescape, and we also have the Inside Modern Data Teams expert session. These sessions are held every second Thursday of the month, and essentially they all cover some different topics in more detail. In Inside Modern Data Teams, we cover essentially every topic that's related to modern data teams. So in the past, we did a lot about agile project management and agile development and data warehousing. Um, and now, essentially, we are doing more in the direction of data governance as well, because it's a huge part of what data teams face in everyday's life, or talk about project setups in a data mesh concept. This is where Leonard holds the sessions more often. And essentially, what we try to do, keep it an interactive session so you guys can post questions. We have a question formula online as well where you can submit questions, and then we will try to answer them in these sessions. At the end of the presentation, I also have a QR code for you guys. Then you will come to the website and can submit questions directly, and then we will try to cover them in one of the next sessions. So what is today's sessions about? Essentially, we got the question how the EU RE Act influences data teams, and especially essentially what it means. So what do data teams need to think about? What are the requirements of this new EU RE Act, and how can we tackle these? And this is what I want to talk about a little bit today. So I brought an agenda. First, we will talk a little bit about an overview. What is the EU Act? When does it get a fixed requirement? And then we will talk about why this matters. So why should you even care about this new regulation? And why is it really interesting for all companies, essentially? Then we talk about the different risk categories we have in the EU IE Act, what these are. I will go in detail when we are there. Then the key principles of responsible IE. Essentially, these are the requirements of the EU IE Act. What do you need to do to comply with the new regulation? And then in the end, I have some steps to build responsible IE systems. And in general, I want to give a little bit of an overview and stuff we can talk about in the future, or what we already talked about at Scalefree. I will give some references as well, so you guys can have a look in more detail. All right, so let's start. What is the EU IE Act? Essentially, let's start with the purpose. Here on the left side, the EU wanted to establish a unified legal framework for IE across Europe. And they want to protect human rights and ensure safety. They want to prohibit the harmful and unethical use of IE, and essentially make it more transparent and accountable, so people can really feel safe and trust these systems when they use them. Furthermore, they want to foster innovation and technical growth, which maybe sounds a little bit weird because it's a new regulation. It's harder for companies to be compliant, and maybe it slows down innovation a little bit because companies need to comply to those regulations. But on the other hand, you really got a standard that you can follow by and that you can get approved by. So it's like a data quality mark, or like a quality mark as well, that you get from the EU. So on the one hand, maybe it slows down a little bit, but it also makes it so you have a real standard and people can be sure what they get when they use your AI. So what is the timeline for the implementation, essentially? In August 2024, they already prohibited IE practices that are in the highest risk category. So we talk about these risk categories later. So essentially, dangerous IE projects, they needed to stop, and that already started in August 2024. Then in August 2025, the transparency rules for general purpose AI takes place, so they will go into effect. And then in 2026, in August, the high-risk AI regulations become enforceable, and then the standards are much higher again. So, what are these different standards, and why does it matter for me or my company? I think the big part is, first of all, AI. I think everybody knows that by now, but it's getting more and more famous in these last years. So, as you can see, for example, in 2023, um, in 2023, 42% of organizations used AI already, which is an up from already 7%. About 90 million organizations started to implement AI in their companies. So it's getting more and more adopted in the general business, and it's just growing. So I think a lot of companies need to think about it. And then we have these really high penalties with the EU IE Act. So essentially, it's up to 7% of the global turnover of a company, which is pretty heavy. So yeah, you should really think about how to comply to this EU IE Act. And then for sure, we also have a social and economic responsibility. AI is a great tool. It can really help you in a lot of different use cases, but it can also be really, really dangerous. I mean, we see it with social rating systems and stuff like that. So there are for sure a lot of things you need to be sure about and be safe about. So I think this regulation really matters for most organizations, especially bigger ones. But yeah, you should keep it in mind, especially when you think about starting an AI project or already have AI projects in your company in place. So what is the risk-based approach in the EU AI regulation? So essentially, we have four different risk steps, you could put it like that. So maybe we start from the bottom in this image with the M, which is minimal risk in essentially. So these systems are subject to basic transparency obligations as outlined in Article 25. And these are, for example, chatbots must disclose that they are AI driven. Then we have limited risk. All right, that's said. Then we have limited risk IE systems. These already require some more oversight. You can see the articles on the screen. These systems generally must comply, but they have a little bit lower standards essentially. High risk, these high risk systems are heavily regulated. And these are areas like healthcare, finance, law enforcement, and these really need to hone down on these requirements. And they need to have good risk management, human oversight, good data governance in place, but we will talk about it in more detail, right? And then we have unacceptable risks. These are essentially stuff that's just prohibited, so you're not allowed to use them anymore. And these are like social scoring systems, stuff that really is dangerous for society. Yes, so what do you need to do when you need to follow these regulations? Essentially, let's put this way: you're in the high risk category, you're working for a financial provider, and you want to implement some AI system. What are the requirements you need to follow? So essentially, we have some different ones. The first key principle of responsible AI is explainability. So what does that mean? In the end, you don't want an AI system that is just in black box. You put input data in, you don't know what happens, and get a solution, output. What you want instead are interpretable large language models, or in general machine learning AI that you can really look into. You can see why does it provide different results? Yeah, and go just more into detail of the transparency part. So what is the model actually learning? Why is it learning that? What decisions are being made? Why are these decisions made? So you don't want a black box system. I think this one is pretty clear. We talk about it about a few years already, even before the regulation. Yes. Then we have the second key principle, which is bias and fairness. So essentially, you should be able to detect and mitigate biases to ensure that your AI system operates equally and provides a fair outcome. There was a really interesting article from Bloomberg about it, where they did like um, did like a test essentially with an AI system, where they gave them a training data of different pictures of doctors, and then they said to the AI system to generate like thousands of doctors. And in the end, they saw that the AI is pretty biased and generates a lot more males than females, for example, which is based on the training data most of the time. But you need to make sure that your AI system is not biased in the end. Then we have the next one, accountability. So it's clearly defined in the EU AI Act who is accountable for the outcomes of AI. So essentially, it's you. If you produce an AI model, if you publish an AI model that users can use, you are responsible for the outcome that the AI gives, and it should be transparent and well understood in the end. But it's just really important to know you are responsible for what your AI puts out there. Then we have the next one, which is data suitability. And this just means in the end, you should make sure that the data you train your AI with is suitable to train AI models. You need to think about GDPR, you need to think about data quality standards, even to get good results, right? But in general, also to be regulatory to this EU AI Act. Yeah, so you're not allowed to, or only in certain cases, allowed to give them GDPR data and all this stuff, right? And what one big point here is with the data suitability is also the part of over and undersampling. What does that mean? At some, in a lot of cases, for example, when you think about a business and you want to train an AI for your business, and you give them like a, I don't know. Or let's go back to the doctor's example. You give the AI a certain set of images of doctors and want the AI to generate new images of doctors. But you only have in the training data, you have 100 men and maybe only 10 women. Then the AI you will produce probably will be biased. So one technique to tackle this is essentially over and undersampling. So in the image, you can see, for example, for undersampling, the original data set, there's one really small one for the female doctors and one really big one for the male doctors. So if you do undersampling, you will move some samples of the majority class. And the other way around with oversampling, right? You would add some pictures of female doctors or female persons so their AI is not biased in the end. And this is a really, there's also a hybrid version of this, but in the end, it's an easy way to yeah, tackle these issues. And you should think about it when you train your AI models. Then we have monitoring, big part as well. Once you develop your AI, it's not done yet, or maybe in the beginning you are done, but you need to monitor the results for a longer part, right? So you should try to follow, yeah, the output of your AI system essentially. So yeah, you want to ensure consistent and reliable performance over time. So that means in the picture, for example, you can see how the output changed over time. In the first feature or in the first development, with the first training data, you got an expected result, but after some time, when you train it with new data, and also just the system changes, a little bit, you will get different results, and you really need to monitor it and be careful that you don't get biased in the end, for example, again, or get wrong results. So yeah, you need to monitor your output. Then we have transparency. I think this one is pretty clear as well. When you provide an AI system, you need to show the users that it's an AI system. This is, for example, the case with chatbots as well, right? You um, need to provide that information that you're writing with an AI chatbot maybe, and not with a real person, right? Yeah, that's, I think, pretty plain and simple, but clear. Then we have auditability. You should have an audible AI system, so there should be a traceable data log that records the algorithm, hyperparameters, data sets, and essentially in general related artifacts. And this is really important as well. In general, also to monitor your system, right? We talked about it already. And there I also have a small example what we would recommend to do with AI systems in the future, especially in a company space or in the business space. Yeah, so these were essentially the key principles of responsible AI of the EU AI Act. For sure, there are some more detailed stuff in the regulation itself, but they are still working on some stuff as well, right? How it really will look like in effect in the next years. So what are steps to build responsible AI systems? So I think the first thing you need to really hone in on, it's not just a development thing. Like back in the day, you had like a data scientist and you just, here's the data, go for it. No, but you need to establish a culture around it. So essentially three parts are important, the lower parts of the image, to provide these AI systems in the end. So first we have the first part is data. So for sure you need good data quality. You need to know what data you are feeding into it. You need to check the regulations about GDPR. So you need to have good data quality. Then you have the tools in the platform. You should have a good tool stack and some versioning and monitoring, all this stuff in place. And then we have one part that I want to talk about more in the future here in these sessions as well, data governance. And I think data governance is getting more and more popular again, partly because of these requirements, partly because you need it to train good AI systems in the end. So what we saw a lot in projects as well is if you have bad data quality and you try to train an AI system, it will give you bad results. So data governance is there to give you descriptions of data to make the AI understand it better, and just have clean data as well, right? So data governance plays a huge part here, and I would like to cover that more in these webinars in the future for sure as well. So feel free to put some questions in regarding data governance or regarding data governance and the AI, so we can talk about them in the future. Now, shortly, I wanted to go on the part of data and tools and platform, because we here at Scalefree, we already had some really interesting webinars about it and have some solutions how we think AI should be implemented in the future. So maybe just shortly, I don't want to go too much into details. These expert sessions, they are there to answer short questions, right? Not to do a full webinar, but essentially this is the classic machine learning workflow without a data warehouse, right? You find your data in the data lake or other sources. Can already be an issue, right? We just talked about GDPR and data quality. Then you extract the data to an individual environment, you clean the data, you transform the data, which is in the end the feature engineering, and then you train the model, repeat until it's accurate, and then you rebuild the data pipelines in production. This is what you do with the machine learning workflow in most companies without a data warehouse. What we this does the data scientist, right? And in the right part, then the data engineers come in and really place this in a pipeline and make it production ready, essentially, these models, right? That the data scientist trained. What is the issue with that? It's feature inconsistencies. Maybe many data scientists work on different stuff. In the end, essentially, they work on the same stuff, but nobody really knows. You have operational complexity, how to operate these things. You have scalability challenges, for sure, governance and compliance issues. I think this is the biggest issue here. And yeah, just hard metadata data management, a lot of stuff to think about. Yeah, so what do we recommend? We would recommend to build AI marts in the end. These AI marts are featured in the data warehouse. And yeah, these are specialized repositories and essentially tailored for our work, but located in the data warehouse. So we can have a centralized feature management and in one point of the company, and this is the data warehouse, we can integrate feature engineering into existing workflows and pipelines. Most data warehouse teams, they have already their workflows in place, they have pipelines in place, they have production deployment processes in place. You can integrate them. We have metadata and versioning, a little bit how this looks like. I will show you as well. Yeah, we can serve multiple targets or workflows essentially with that. We can store the logs. And yeah, just to get much more data governance because the data warehouse is already data governant and we have better data quality. And yeah, this is essentially a first step to become AI Act compliant. So how do you do that in the data platform? Just really quickly, essentially you build up new AI marts, which are built based on the raw and business vault, or can be on the data lake directly as well, but you need to be careful, right, with governance aspects. And then you have a data science platform after your data warehouse where you do the pipeline with training and evaluation, and then you make the different model registry. You have a modeling serving part, and all this stuff, what's interesting now, gets pushed back to the data warehouse again. So you can, first of all, track your training and evaluation data. So your artifacts, your metadata, metrics, parameter, hyperparameters, all this stuff you can play back to your data warehouse, analyze what is happening, maybe use them for future stuff. So this is really a big benefit. The same goes for the usage, right? Input, output, logs, what is your model doing? This stuff you can play back to your data warehouse directly. If you want to go a little bit more detailed into this technical part, how we will do that, we have some really good webinars. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I can send you the links. There's some recordings and also stuff coming up. Yeah, so really interesting topic, and I hope to go into detail of the data governance part more in the future with you guys. Please provide me some questions if you have some. So essentially, like I said, this session every second Thursday of the month. We discover key strategies for building effective, agile, and collaborative modern data teams. I talked about it. Agile was a big part. Data governance is a big part. Um, Concepts like data mesh, how do you work together in a data mesh team? How you set up these things, also a big part. And yeah, if you want to submit a question, scan the QR code, go to the link on our website. Please submit a question. Thank you very much for joining. I hope I could give you some insights and help a little bit with an overview of this EU AI Act and also what are some recommendations or what is important to think about when starting your AI journey in the company. Cool. Thank you very much, guys, and have a great Thursday. Bye bye.